Hi, my name is Joe Bankard. I work with Leap Housing. This video is intended to help faith communities walk through a discernment process to see if affordable housing is right for them. A few things to know about Leap Housing. We are a nonprofit in the state of Idaho, and our objective, our mission, is to develop and sustain affordable housing opportunities. One area that LEAP works with, one of many, is faith communities like yourselves. We call this our YIGBY program, or Yes in God's Backyard. Many of you have heard the term NIMBY, not in my backyard. This is kind of the redemptive side of that, which is yes in God's backyard. Faith communities who have interest, who might have passion or desire to use church land to develop affordable housing opportunities. So my hope is that throughout this video and this PowerPoint presentation, it will help give you valuable information as you talk with church leaders, church boards and church councils, congregants, denominational leaders, right? Giving that information you need, touching on some of the decision points. Do we go with option A? Do we go with option B? Do we go with option C? What would be best for our particular faith community? So I'm hoping to give information and to kind of help clarify and simplify the discernment process for those communities that are having these important conversations. So I give leadership to the YIGBY program here at LEAP. Faith communities have a lot to offer. So just a preliminary look throughout the Treasure Valley shows that faith communities have about 180 acres of underused land. 180 acres, that's just within the Treasure Valley. To put it in context, that's larger than the entirety of Boise State's campus. So there's a lot of underused land within our faith communities, and I really believe that we together can make a huge impact in the housing crisis that's facing our community and our state. I don't know anyone that hasn't been impacted by the housing crisis. The cost of owning a home, the rising cost of rent, the very, very low availability. Many of us have experienced a rise in property taxes. I have a senior in high school, and I wonder how will he ever be able to afford his own home if he wants to live in Boise. It feels almost an impossible task given the average cost of a home. So, because of these various issues, we've seen an incredible rise in the number of people experiencing homelessness and other things that make this something that churches really should know about and want to engage. And LEAP is here to partner so that together we can solve this housing crisis. And I really believe that collectively we could solve it. Some data to give some perspective on the problem. The top line there in dark blue shows the average cost of a home in Boise. In 2013, it's around $200,000. The average price. By the year 2024, it is over $500,000. So it's gone up 150% in those 10 years, 11 years. But when you look at the bottom line, the orange line, that shows average median income, AMI. You'll hear me say that throughout. AMI, area median income. That was at 48,000 in 2013, and it's gone up some to 71,000 in 2024, but not nearly the way housing prices have gone up. And so it becomes more and more and more difficult for people making the wages that are offered to own a home. Another way to think of it, in 2013, a family earning 80% of area median income or below, right? At that time in 2013, if they lived in Boise, that means that they'd be making $48,000 a year, 80% of AMI, right? With an average sales price of $200,000, they were spending about 25% of their income on housing. Here's something that's important to know. If a household spends more than 30% of their income on housing, they're house burdened. This is not healthy economically for any individual or any family to be spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So in 2013, a family of making 80% of area median income was only spending 25%. But look at what happens in 2018. That exact same family making 80% AMI, now they're making more money. They're making $56,000 a year, but the average price is at $325,000, meaning this family is spending 35% of their income on housing. And if you go to 2023, that same family making 80% AMI, they're now spending 55% of their income on housing. That's not sustainable. And this has become a real crisis throughout the state of Idaho. When I talk to churches, for me, this really has to become missional, something that a faith community becomes passionate about. There are so many good things churches can be involved in. Missions work and evangelism. Someone might get involved and say, our church really emphasizes work in the environment, or we're engaged in issues of abortion, adoption, human trafficking. So many important things for churches to get involved in. One thing I'm hoping your faith community considers is affordable housing. Can we, as a faith community, engage housing in a way that gives hope to our neighbors, that really provides tangible benefit to those that are suffering, to the least of these? Part of this motivation, I think, can come from Matthew 25. So in Matthew 25, the context is it's sort of Judgment Day. Jesus is looking out over the nations, and he is separating folks, separating the sheep from the goats. And the sheep he places on his right, and the goats he places on his left. And he tells the sheep, right, you are sheep because when I was hungry, you fed me, and when I was naked, you clothed me, and when I was sick and in prison, you visited me. You are here. You are one of my disciples. You are faithful because of the tangible ways you loved me when I had physical needs, right? And then, of course, the sheep say, well, when did we ever see you, right? So starting in verse 37, the righteous will say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and give you clothes to wear? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? Then the king will reply to them, I assure you that when you have done it for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you have done it for me. And I would add housing into this list, right? When we house those who are unhoused, when we provide shelter to those who don't have adequate shelter, we are doing it for Jesus. Tangible love to our neighbor is one way that we demonstrate our love for God. And so again, housing is not the only thing, not the only way we might live into Matthew 25, but it is one way. And this is why I hope your faith community will kind of move through the discernment process to see, is this a good fit? Do we have underused land that could be used for affordable housing? Doing that is a way of living out the gospel and really being faithful to mission. So if you're interested, if you're still watching this video, I want to walk through, here are some of the main decision points, the main areas of discernment that I would ask your community to engage in. So the first decision point is, are we interested in a partnership with LEAP? Are we interested in developing affordable housing on church land? If the answer ends up being no, there's not a strong desire, this isn't a good mission fit for this faith community, right? Then the process ends here. I'm grateful that you were willing to engage it, and that's all right. If the answer is yes, or if the answer is maybe, I'd like to hear more, great. Then there's a few things that you should know. The first, if your faith community was to partner with LEAP to build affordable housing on church land, this would not cost the church any money. The church does not have to raise the funds. The church does not have to engage in a capital campaign. The church is not responsible for construction. The church does not have to collect rent. The church is not responsible to be the property managers. LEAP takes care of all that. LEAP raises the money. LEAP oversees the project, the building and construction. LEAP is the one responsible to hire property management and to ensure that the property is upkept well and that tenants are taken care of. The church is set free. The church can just bring casseroles to the families that move in to say, we love you, come to our Easter service. The church does not ever have to be the bad person to collect rent or to evict or to do any of those things. LEAP is responsible for all of that. Something else you should know, nothing will happen to the church. This is your land. If you enter a partnership with LEAP, you're essentially trusting us with this land. LEAP wants to complete a project that the church is happy with. LEAP wants the church to be like, this was wonderful, so that you will tell other faith communities and we can have future partners. If we were to come in and complete a project that the church was not happy with, if you felt like you weren't listened to, if it wasn't a real partnership, then that not only would make me very unhappy, right? Like, oh, that's terrible, but it would hurt any of our future attempts to work with churches. So we're here to be a real partner. The church will decide the number of units. The church will decide, are these going to be rentals or is it going to be home ownership? The church will have some say in what it will look like. There are often 3 or 4 options for what the structures will look like. The church has input in the rental agreement, so to make sure that there are good and respectful neighbors. The church will have input every step of the way so that we come up with a project that works for the faith community and a project that works for LEAP in a real, genuine partnership. Okay. If you're willing to move on to the next question, if you felt comfortable at this point, there are 3 ways the faith community can transfer the land to LEAP, right? So that LEAP would then be able to raise the funds and complete the project. The first is that the faith community can donate the land to LEAP. The second is that the faith community can sell the land to LEAP. And the third is that the faith community can enter into a long-term ground lease with LEAP. And I'll talk about each of these briefly. Donating the land is straightforward. We are grateful. This option, more than any other, will allow LEAP to make a financially feasible project that can really help those in need. Donating the land allows LEAP to keep the costs very low, and keeping the costs low allows us to really serve those in need. Sometimes faith communities can't donate the land because they've got financial needs of their own, and so selling the land makes the most sense. If the faith community decides to sell the land to LEAP, we ask that you prayerfully consider selling it to LEAP below market rate. If you sell it to LEAP below market rate, you're helping us to close the gap financially. Every project is expensive, and LEAP has to raise the money through writing grants to the federal government, state governments, city governments, philanthropic giving. Every project has to get funded. When the land is sold below market rate, that closes that gap and makes the project much more financially feasible. If you're considering selling it at full market rate, LEAP would still be interested in purchasing that land at full market value. But at that point, the church loses a lot of its ability to decide what the project will look like. Selling it for full market value is essentially like selling it to a developer, where once it's sold, the developer is going to complete the project as they see fit. By selling it to LEAP below market rate, you will be an ongoing partner, right? You're giving us an incredible benefit of selling the land below market rate. LEAP's going to then be a partner so that the church will have a strong say in how many units, what kind of housing is it, what kind of populations is the housing going to serve, and things like that. The third option is a long-term ground lease. Most funding that funds affordable housing requires the ground lease to be a minimum of 50, often up to 99 years. So it is a very long-term ground lease. The reason behind that is that the entities that are giving the money to pay for the affordable housing want to see it remain affordable for as long as possible. And so that's why it's a long-term lease. Now, these ground leases are typically low-cost leases. I'll talk about a project later where it was a ground lease, a 50-year ground lease, and the church charged $1 a year for the lease, so a total of $50. So it essentially allows LEAP to get access to the land for 50 years at almost no cost. That keeps the cost of the project down, making it financially feasible. Now, at the end of the lease, when the lease ends, the land and the structures go back to the church. I'm going to say that again. At the end of the lease, the land and the structures go back to the church. So the church will inherit an incredible asset. At that point, the church can do what they want. They could sell the structures, continue operating them as affordable housing. It would just give the future church a lot to work with. So the lease option, the church is not getting rid of the land permanently the way the land is gone permanently if you donate or sell. In a lease, the church will eventually reclaim that land and those structures debt-free when the lease is up. Another decision point for the church. You might want to pause at this point. It might be enough just to talk about that first issue, right? Just to engage the faith community, the leadership, with what seems to be the most viable option: donating, selling, or a long-term ground lease. What seems to be the best? As you're ready to move forward, another bit of discernment that the faith community should undergo is, are we thinking about a project where they would be rental units so that people would rent? Or another option is, do we want to provide affordable housing that goes towards affordable home ownership? If you go the home ownership route, it requires the faith community to either donate the land or to sell the land to LEAP. Leasing the land will not work with home ownership. Leasing the land means the project would need to be a rental project. To tell you a little bit more about affordable home ownership, here's how it works. At this point, the cost of owning a home is high and many people are priced out of the market. So LEAP has created a land trust. When LEAP gets land, it goes into the land trust, and then homes are built on that land, and then LEAP sells those homes to individuals that qualify. The individuals that purchase the homes purchase the structure only, the home only. They do not purchase the land. By taking the land out of the equation, because it's in LEAP's land trust, it holds the cost down. The person is only purchasing the structure of the home, and over time, as that structure increases in value, they earn equity. And then when that person sells the home, they sell the structure only, not the land. And so the next person that purchases it buys the structure only, not the land. It stays in Leaf's Land Trust. And so this home remains perpetually affordable. It's affordable to the first family that buys it. And if that family sells it, it will be affordable to the next family that buys it, because each of those families are only buying the structure. Now, to qualify to purchase an affordable home, the home buyer must make 80% of AMI or less. So anyone making 80% of area median income or less is qualified to purchase an affordable home. What is 80% of area median income? It depends on the community. 80% of area median income in Beverly Hills is much higher than 80% of area median income in Nampa, Idaho. And Nampa, Idaho's area median income would be higher than the area median income of Burley. So area median income is always based on zip code, on the particular place a person is at. Another set of decisions for the church to kind of think through, pray through, talk as a group. Is there a specific population the church wants to serve? Some examples. Affordable housing can be dedicated to seniors. To qualify, a person would have to be 55 years or older, and that person would have to make 80% AMI or below. So it's dedicated senior housing, and there's funding specifically for senior affordable housing. Or the church might want to create workforce housing. Workforce housing is 80% of AMI or below. So the rentals or the home ownership would dedicate it to workforce housing, those households making 80% of AMI or below. Or the church might say, you know what, we actually want to help those at the lowest income, those who experience the greatest housing insecurity. And so a faith community might say, we want to target people making 30% of AMI or lower. And that's an option. Some projects are mixed. Some units dedicated to 80%, some units dedicated to 30%. So there are options. Some faith communities are passionate about foster care. There are affordable housing options that are targeted to 18-year-olds aging out of the foster care system and need housing. That can be an option. Maybe a church is really interested in like refugee housing. So thinking about the church and your mission and the people that you serve, is there a demographic or a population you might want to target? Another important question, how many units of housing is the church comfortable with? Every faith community is already within a particular zoning. Sometimes zoning allows a faith community to build 50 units or 30 units. Sometimes the zoning only allows for 6 units of housing. So it varies based on where the faith community is located. But a second question, in addition to zoning, is what are you as a faith community comfortable with? You know, at LEAP, we tend to ask faith communities to consider maximizing density. If zoning allows for 10, please consider 10. We can help more families that way. But sometimes a faith community says, zoning allows for 10, but we only feel comfortable with 6. If that's the case, then as long as that's financially feasible for LEAP on our end, then we would make it work with 6. And so the church is going to get a lot of input there. Another question for the faith community to consider, do you want the housing to be single-family homes, each separated with their own yards, things like that? Is the church open to multifamily homes, which are apartments or condos or townhomes? If a faith community is open to multifamily, we can get more density. We can help more families out. But sometimes faith communities would rather have single-family homes instead. So these are questions for you to mull over as we work back and forth in partnership. What project does the faith community want to see happen? What project can work for LEAP and is financially feasible? And that partnership will result in a project that both are happy with. At this point, you can pause the video. These are the main questions to consider. How much passion and energy is around a project? If there's a lot of passion, how might we transfer the land to LEAP? Are we interested in rentals or home ownership? What kind of demographic? How many units are we comfortable with? And as the church has these conversations, eventually there will be a set of decisions made. And these are not guarantees, but the faith community will say, we're most interested in a land lease. We are open to 15 units. We're going to do rentals for workforce housing, 80% of AMI or below. And when the church gets to that place where you've answered some of these questions and you start to feel comfortable, at that point, we would enter into an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. The church would sign an MOU, which essentially says for 1 year, we're not going to sell this land. We're not going to work with any other developers. We're going to allow LEAP to do a feasibility study. Feasibility takes about 120 days. And essentially the employees at LEAP are going to kick into high gear. They're going to be working with the local city, looking at zoning. Is the church in a floodplain? What does the land look like? What would the access points be? And they're going to be creating mock-ups. What might this look like? How might the houses fit on church land? To create visuals so that the faith community can take a look and give input and weigh in on these things, right? But that MOU unlocks LEAP's resources so that the human hours can go into doing a full feasibility study. Now, often, full feasibility studies cost about $10,000. It's a lot of work. But when LEAP works with faith communities in our YIGBY program, it's free to the church. LEAP does not charge the faith community for the full feasibility. All right, so here are some recent YIGBY projects, churches that have partnered with LEAP to build affordable housing. I hope these might inspire, they might show you what's possible. So the first here, it's the project is called Taft Homes at Collister United Methodist Church. This church had about 1/4 of an acre. The church leased the land. It's a 50-year ground lease. They divided it into those 2 parcels, okay? Once the ground lease was signed, LEAP then raised the money. LEAP partnered with a developer, Flinner Homes. They make many designer homes in the state of Idaho, but they have a missional wing where they also design and develop affordable housing. Flinner Homes was the contractor that built, as LEAP oversaw that, but Flinner actually built those homes. And then LEAP and the church reached out to Catch. Catch is a local nonprofit in the Treasure Valley, helping people get out of homelessness. And Catch vetted families and helped them move in to these 2 homes in October of 2022. Collister United Methodist Church wanted to target those at the lowest income bracket. So both of these rental homes are dedicated to people making 30% of area median income or below. In this case, both families were single mothers with 4 children. And it was a beautiful thing to see these families move in. Many of them, in this case, these 2 families were staying in hotels part of the month, living in their car part of the month, incredibly housing insecure. Through Catch's rapid rehousing program, we were able to get them into more stable housing here, and it's been great. The house on the left there, the woman had her grandchild dedicated at the church. The woman on the right is now on the church council at Collister United Methodist Church. Her oldest teenage daughter works in the nursery. it's just been a really beautiful partnership to see these things happen. And again, this is something that took some risk on the part of Collister, right? To have neighbors there by their parking lot. There was some legitimate questions and some skepticism, right, on the part of the congregation as the process was unfolding. Like, I don't know, is this going to be all right? If you talked to the congregation today, we have follow-ups, right? As you talk to the congregation today, there is such joy and excitement around these homes and the families that live there. There isn't one person at Collister UMC that regrets building housing on church land. Some additional pictures. This was an aerial shot. On the bottom, you can see that's the church parking lot. You can see the foundations of those two homes going in there. This is the front. It's a one-car garage, but then another car can park in the driveway there. They're each single-family standalone homes. They each have a backyard and a front yard here, as you can see. You see the kitchen. The quality of Flinner homes, the craftsmanship is so strong. You can see the bathroom. This is the backyard, so they've got the privacy fence, quiet. A second project I would tell you about is King of Glory Lutheran Church. This is also here in Boise. Here there's going to be 8 homes. It's a mixed project. Some of them will rent at 80% of AMI. So this is a rental project also. Some will rent at 30% of AMI. So they're going to do a mixed project. In this case, the Lutheran Church sold the land to Leap at an incredible discount. So they sold the land to Leap for about 20% of market value. And by selling it to Leap at a low market value rate, it allowed the project to be financially feasible. It closed that gap of fundraising. So this is the aerial view. You can see King of Glory Lutheran there. That dirt lot behind is the land that was sold to Leap for the homes. The homes have not been built yet. This is a mock-up. So you can see Leap is intentionally creating a pocket community where the homes face each other. There's some space for interaction. But if you see behind those homes, that green space is going to be for kids to play. There's going to be some equipment so that kids can play on swings and things. Just a kind of park area so that these families can get to know each other and be a real neighborhood. Here's a great example, this project of partnership. You can see that green space could be more homes. Leap initially talked to King of Glory Lutheran about doing 16 homes instead of 8. So we said, let's put 16 homes there. The church did not feel comfortable with 16. They felt much more comfortable with a lower number. And so we ended up settling on 8. 8 allowed the project to be financially feasible for Leap, and it was comfortable for the church. And so we found that middle ground. The last project I'll tell you about is Lakeview Church of the Nazarene in Nampa, Idaho. In this case, Lakeview donated the land to Leap, and then Leap built one home, and it was affordable home ownership. That home has been built and purchased. The family that purchased it, it was 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. That family that purchased had to qualify making 80% of AMI or below. If that family decides to sell in the future, again, the land is in Leap's land trust. They'll sell the structure and make equity on that, but the next buyer will buy the structure only, and that will keep it perpetually affordable there at Lakeview. So these are just some projects. One a ground lease, one a land sale, the other a land donation. This is not one size fits all. This is about Leap doing what it can to work with you, to try to get a sense of what you as a faith community want. Who are you trying to serve? How can we partner in a way that can make this project come to fruition. But every faith community has different needs, different size land, different contexts. And so we want to work with you to get the right project. It will not be standard or one size fits all. I would love to answer any questions, to come to your church board or church council meeting, to Zoom in, to answer questions by phone. Please reach out if you need anything. If you have a pen and paper, I can give you my contact information. You can email me at joe@leaphousing.org. That's Joe, Joe, at leaphousing.org. And I try to get to inbox 0 every day. So I check my email a lot and will respond and we can connect.